You're listening to Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong, all on Georgia Radio Network.
All right, welcome to episode 25 of the Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong podcast. We've got a lot going on. We've got last week's election results, got a lot of discussion about that. We've got California with their plastic straw ban. It's getting quite serious. People are going to jail out there. Last week marks the 40th birthday for the world's first test tube baby. So there's that. There's a yay for modern science. And we're going to discuss some millennial trends, wearing white before Labor Day and 6 a.m. yoga. We're going to close all this out with a final segment where I'm going to discuss pop culture. This came up last week off the air after the show. And so I'm going to be doing our first ever Jonathan Discusses the Pop Culture segment, which we may rename. Jessica's going to provide me with another cool topic to discuss on next week's show. But this week we're going to be discussing the Shiggy Challenge. And if you don't know what that is, I'll tell you all about it. Joining me tonight, I have Jessica Salazzi, who's always here.
Hello.
All right. That's fantastic. We also have Matt Lowe here with us.
Yo.
All right. Matt, you need to come up a little bit closer to your microphone there. So
I was all lounging back.
Yeah, you can't lounge back. I think what I'm going to do, I saw a fantastic thing for you that I think we need to get you. They have these headphones that have the microphone in them. And they're
I've actually got a set in my shopping cart on Amazon. I haven't pulled the trigger on it yet because I was trying to decide if I wanted to do that or not. But I think I'm going to have to.
Yeah, we've got a guy. I'm here in Philadelphia, and we've got a guy that's he does a large podcast about breweries. I can't remember the name of it, or I'd give him a shout out, but that's what he uses on every one of his podcasts is he goes and meets somebody of influence at a bar, and that's what they use is the headset microphones.
Right.
But
I know most of the podcasts that I listen to, that is the way they record.
Yeah. So all right, well, we're going to get off of boring people with our equipment now and go ahead and start with it's now acceptable in the city of Santa Barbara for people to be arrested for defying the plastic straw ban. We're not going to rehash all of the California plastic straw ban because we've been there before. You can find that in the archives. I'm not sure what episode, but just listen to them all and you'll find it somewhere. But now, according to a new ordinance in the city's municipal code, it allows for a fine not exceeding $1,000 and imprisonment for a term not exceeding 6 months. And that is for the distribution of plastic straws at restaurants, bars, or other food establishments.
Plastic? Like a drinking straw?
Yes, we are referring to a drinking straw.
What other kind of plastic straw is there?
This began in Seattle, which was the first major U.S. city to ban plastic straws, which they fined businesses $250 per offense. Which still, I mean, don't take this as a justification at all. I mean, that's certainly not right by any stretch, but, you know, at least the city of Seattle is not putting people in jail for the horrid offense of distributing plastic straws.
Man.
Well, you know, the reason that I'm opposed to this is because, like, this is already a thing in a lot of foreign countries, especially in the Caribbean because of the litter in the oceans and all of that stuff. But have you ever tried to drink, like, a margarita or a daiquiri out of a paper straw?
I have not.
Well, it's not fun, and that's the alternative to plastic. And it's to when we went to the Dominican this February, they made us drink from paper straws, and I promised after that I would bring my own straws to any resort I went to in the Caribbean because it was horrible. It gets all stuck and starts, I don't know, it's just a mess. You can't drink through a paper straw. Paper gets wet.
So what about a stainless steel straw, like they have a Yeti?
Right? Or a twisty curvy one like you have when you're a kid.
Yeah, but those are plastic.
But they're reusable.
Well, I mean, on a purely technical basis, all straws are reusable.
You should tell that. You should go out there and challenge it on that premise. And the paper ones are not reusable.
Well, that is true.
Man, so could you imagine if you had to go to jail for that? Have any of y'all ever spent time in jail?
I haven't.
Okay, well, sadly, I have, and it was stupid stuff, but and not for any length of time, but everyone in there, they're what are you in for, right? And I could not imagine being the guy, some dude's in there for killing somebody, another one's in there, for various hard charges, and you're like, oh, I was trafficking straws. I would hate to be that guy.
I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, it's
trafficking straws.
Truly
and,
criminal.
Speaking of straws and other types of tubes, it's a fantastic segue into this story. July 25th, 1978, Louis Brown was born. That is important and that is special because she was the very first IVF baby. And since that time, there have been 8 million more and counting. Nobody has any controversial opinions on in vitro fertilization, I'm hoping.
Our name's not Mike Griffin with the Georgia Baptist Convention, so no.
Okay. Well, that certainly is reassuring.
Matt, do you have an opinion?
On what?
In vitro fertilization. I know that's not your method that you use, but do you have an issue with it?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Actually, my only issue with it is that it is insanely expensive.
It is.
How much do you think it should cost?
Not tens of thousands of dollars. I mean, if I'm gonna fork out $20,000, you better guarantee something.
And that really has become, in a sense, a type of luxury industry. Not so much necessarily the in vitro fertilization part. That's more the end result. But you get these career-minded women that that they cross the threshold of 35, 36 years old, and suddenly they're being hit with these ideas that maybe they need to freeze some eggs and things like that to allow them to do in vitro. And women pay insane amounts of money to freeze eggs. And I cannot recall the exact numbers off the top of my head. I don't have them in front of me and I don't want to just make something up, but it's a ridiculously low number of those women who ever go back and have one of those eggs fertilized and attempt an in vitro fertilization. It's just for most women, it just becomes a waste of money. They're throwing, $25,000-$30,000 down the drain for something that in many cases is not medically necessary. There's a large number of these women, a large percentage of them who become pregnant naturally. You know, they have a bad breakup at 35 and, oh my Lord, I'll never meet the man of my dreams. And then they move on and they marry a man at 38 and have a child the all natural American way. And in the process, they've paid some freezer company $25,000 to freeze.
I did
their
not
eggs.
know that it was like so radical or uncommon for women to do that.
Well, it's not really uncommon. It's just something that it's not used very much. It's not as though, you know, women, there's like a very high percentage of women that are which I guess is my point, is that, you know, if women were freezing their eggs and then 85% were going back to have an IVF procedure done at a later date, then I would be like, you know, whatever, it's none of my business. But, you know, I'm just merely pointing out that it appears to be something of a fear-mongering industry where you're scaring women with research that is faulty on its own premise. You know, the results from when the results, the statistics that they use to come up with the idea that women can't safely have children after 35 or 36, whatever the research may be, was taken from French census data from the 1600s. So
Where do you learn this stuff?
I watch a lot of YouTube videos in the evening. Most of this information is pretty much straight up plagiarized from an episode of Adam Ruins Everything. So, moving right along from that to...
well, hold on. I want to back up a second.
Well, back up a second.
Because Jessica asked if I had opinion on it, if I had an issue with it. And I was curious if she did.
She already said she didn't before she asked you if you did.
Did she? Man, I must have checked out or not heard or something.
Jessica,
maybe I was clicking on things and trying to read the story.
You're in under 30. You're hip and single.
Not for much longer.
Well, she is for this show. So
yeah. Next show she'll be 30.
Have you ever attended a daybreaker party, Jessica?
A what?
A daybreaker party. According to avclub.com, a daybreaker party is a party in which a lot of people wear white, and it's a dance party. You show up, you dance, and then apparently the tickets are usually $40 for yoga and dancing, or $25 to just dance at 7 a.m. on a rooftop. So apparently these things kick off something in the area of 4 a.m., 5 a.m. So what this is an early morning party where everyone's wearing white. There's no alcohol, but there's 6 a.m. yoga, and then there's dancing on the roof of a building.
Nope. Not happening. I haven't been and I don't want to.
You're getting old.
I don't know what is fun about... First of all, no one wears white to yoga, so that's weird. And then... So you're wearing white, you're getting up early, and then you're dancing in your yoga clothes. Like, that's just... No,
I don't understand. Why don't you wear white to yoga? What do you wear to yoga?
That's just not the colors that most yoga clothes come in. They usually come in, like, pastels or black.
Oh, okay. So you prefer pastels or blacks, too?
Yeah, that's right. Well, I mean, generally I wear a lot of black just to go with,
The blackness
heart.
of your soul.
Yeah, but occasionally I'll throw them a bone with a pastel.
All right.
I don't. Why is this? No, man, because this article says it was a Wednesday, right? And I don't know about y'all, but by 7 a.m. I'm commuting to work because I have a job, not dancing on a rooftop.
I have a home office.
Man, that's just a weird. I mean, people do weird things all the time, but I don't even. That's just why. I don't even have a problem with getting up early. I get up early and go do things that people think are insane all the time, to stomp around the woods and climb trees, and and I do that in the winter months when it's cold as crap. So.
Yeah, I mean, who are you to judge? I mean, it's these folks are getting up and wearing white and doing yoga. You're getting up, putting on camo and sitting in a tree. I mean,
providing food for my family.
I suppose.
It's interesting. I don't know.
It certainly is interesting. And hey, these interesting opinions are the opinions of us and only the members of the Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong podcast. They do not represent the opinions of All on Georgia or any other entity. So the runoff election happened on the 24th?
24th.
Yeah, the runoff election happened on the 24th. There was quite some shocking turnouts going on in several races. We'll just go ahead and we'll start down here with the state house races. I know that we're all very happy and excited about the fact that in the House District 19 race, Joseph Gullett collected 57% of the vote, as opposed to incumbent Paulette Rakestraw's 43%. So House District 19 has a brand new legislature coming in January.
God, I couldn't be more thrilled about that.
Jenny Earhart squeaked past Tom's Gray. I'm just going to go down through the rest of these since we haven't really discussed them. And Jessica, if you want to cut me off for House District 36, Jenny Earhart squeaked past Thomas Gray. That was a Republican race in the 97th House District.
Jenny Earhart won.
Jenny Earhart won.
So that's terrible news for her district because she's replacing her husband.
Expand. Tell us more.
I mean, you had an Earhart resign and then an Earhart run again. Like, it's stupid. And he wasn't even good.
It's a family business.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure it's a family business when she's not around, but that's okay.
House District 97, Bonnie Rich applied a curb stomping to Kipper Tab. 62% of the vote to 38%. An even stronger showing in House District 102 with Paula Hastings beating Zach Protter with 64% of the vote. House District 105, Donna Shelton took out Robert Mock with 54% of the vote. In the 111th House District, this is a Democratic primary, El Mahdi Holly got 59% of the vote to 41% of the vote for Tarjee Dunn. In the 141st, this is Allen Peak's old district. Dale Washburn got 60% of the vote to Gary Betchel's 40%. And in the 144th district, Jessica Walden squeezed past Greg Odom with 53% of the vote. In the governor's race, the Republican primary for the governor's race, Brian Kemp pulled 406,638 votes and Casey Cagle pulled 178,877. For the math magicians out there, that is 69% of the vote for Brian Kemp and 31% of the vote for Casey Cagle. So,
man, I couldn't have been more thrilled about that. I got the news that Cagle conceded while I was at the courthouse with Joseph. But prior to that, I had made the comment that I wanted Cagle to lose. But I didn't just want him to lose. I wanted that loss to be so lopsided and so decisive that he understood that the people of Georgia don't want him in politics anymore. And I think that might have happened.
Well, what's absolutely crazy about it, and I think has surprised a lot of people, is that there was a lot of internal polling released on Twitter and around social media after Cagle conceded, and the recordings that came out from Clay Tippins didn't make Cagle decline. It just never allowed him to go up. Like, he never once went up from the primary. The line just stayed within the same range and the same few percentage points. And it wasn't until Nathan Deal's endorsement that it actually declined. And then when Trump endorsed Kemp, it was just this mountainous decline down the half the page, 18 percentage points, which was so beautiful and glorious. I've never seen such a pretty chart in my life, but you know, but it's crazy because we're all like, oh, these recordings are totally going to be, you know, the straw that breaks the camel's back and tips it in Kemp's favor. And I think Kemp would have won regardless of whether or not Trump endorsed him, because he was on the uptick the entire time they were polling and Cagle just stayed flat. But, you know, most of us insiders would expect a recording like that to really tank someone, and it didn't. Right.
You know, I'll tell you what I think the reality of the situation is that I'm very glad for the Republicans that Kemp did win rather, because I think that if Cagle wins this primary, I think that at that point, those recordings become a very big deal in the general election. Because, you know, I think that it's a difficult thing because, you know, here's the reality. You know, all of us as political people go, all of us are very kind of idealistic, but nothing on the tapes was really shocking to us. You know,
right.
We know that's how politics work. We don't like it, but we know that's how they work. But, you know, you're run-of-the-mill person that doesn't really pay that close of attention to politics. They're taken aback by that, and they're the people that don't typically vote in the primaries and only show up to vote in the general elections.
Right. No, and you know, most of us who were disgusted by, who didn't just write, I mean, yes, there's a difference between knowing that it happens and being disgusted by it and knowing that it happens and tolerating it. And like, I don't think any of us would ever support a candidate who behaves like that. So
right,
the people who were supporting Cagle weren't going to jump ship, whereas the rest of us were never with Cagle because that is Cagle. You know what I mean? So like, he didn't go down. He just stayed steady because the people who were supporting him were as unprincipled as he was.
Right. Absolutely. And in the closest by far race of the statewide races anyway, the final total for the lieutenant governor's race came down with a Duncan win, which we'll get to the Duncan win in a second. But just looking at the numbers here, you had 279,226 votes for Jeff Duncan and 277,496 votes for David Schaefer. Looking at the percentages, that is 50.2% to 49.8%. So the Schaefer Duncan race was almost a dead split. It certainly was not by any stretch of the imagination, just a blowout the way that the Kemp Cagle race was, which, I think that the Kemp Cagle race was certainly a showing of the Georgia voters' opinions of Cagle, and that just did not happen with the Duncan Schaefer race. So, anybody have any thoughts on the Duncan Schaefer race? I saw that last week Jessica actually wrote an article about that. So
I saw something, and I don't remember what it was now. It may have been a post from Josh McCoon, I think, that said something to the effect of there was enough provisional ballots out there that could flip that race.
Right. I think Josh McCoon was the one to put it out there. And, when we recorded this, the race hadn't been decided, although Jeff Duncan declared victory. But David Schaefer feels confident that, there's a possibility that he could still pull it out based on provisional ballots. And then there were news articles circulating too that were saying that the Secretary of State's ballots weren't properly fitted, so they didn't fit in the envelope. So people had to cut them to make them fit in the envelope, which damaged them, and they're going back to cut them by hand. And so all of these things are happening. And then you have the military and overseas stuff. And someone actually commented on my post that she worked in the Fulton County Board of Elections, and she'd had more provisional ballots than any other race before because of some court ruling. She didn't name the court ruling, but there's just a lot of factors in play, and it's the closest margin in recent history for a runoff. And so I think, he has the right to have a recount, and he can do that once the results are official, which I think will be like 4 days after the election. So I mean, we're getting into a timeline that's going to conflict with the show, but
yeah,
that's making it hard. But it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out, because, of course, if Schaefer pulls it out, people are going to cry foul from the Duncan campaign.
Well, I mean, it's not as though the Duncan campaign has run a positive campaign up until this point in any event. So, I have, and honestly, that's my issue with this race more than anything else, is I would like to hear something from Jeff Duncan of, this is my plan. This is what matters to me. Something other than my opponent is trash and here's why. Because that's been his entire campaign. I'm a baseball player and a businessman. My opponent is trash. That's every Jeff Duncan ad.
Right.
Right. It's embarrassing, and it's disgusting, and unless he changes his character considerably or offers some sort of apology, I have no interest in voting for him and perpetuating the nastiness that he spewed across the state for 10 months, because it literally was his entire campaign.
Yeah, I mean, it was just gutter politics. And, look, I get it. Okay. Negativity moves. We all know that. All three of us, we know that, you can write up, Jessica can go down to the local middle school and do these heartwarming articles about these kids, and, a few hundred people read it, but, she goes out to a city and exposes some nastiness and some corruption, and it just flies all over the state. This is the nature of news. But
you'll move
still,
faster than corruption.
What's that?
Arrest records. Good Lord.
Yeah, speaking of that, just as a complete aside, listen, I have access to a lot of the private messages that come to a lot of the All on Georgia Facebook pages, and residents of Paulding County and readers of the Paulding County Booking Report. I would like to thank you for ensuring that Matt gets that report up on time every morning, because you people have shown us your passion for reading Matt Lowe's booking report. And I think I speak on behalf of All on Georgia, Jessica, Delvis, and everybody else in saying thank you for keeping Matt on task with the booking reports. It's just fantastic. So the last of the major statewide races was the Republican primary between Ben Raffensperger and David Belle Isle. And that was also just a rout, not quite so bad as Kemp versus Cagle, but Raffensperger pulled out just a massive, looks like around 125,000 votes more than Belle Isle did. Final totals were 61.8% to 38.2%. I don't have the monetary totals in front of me. Perhaps Jessica has a little bit of knowledge on the money, but I do know without any question that Raffensperger outspent Belle Isle by a fortune. So, you know, there's that race. It looks like it's going to be Raffensperger versus, my notes are bad and I'm having a brain moment here. Who is Raffensperger facing in November?
John Barrow.
That's it, yeah.
And Smith.
Yeah, I don't know why I was having such a... John Barrow used to be the congressman where I live.
Yeah, it's you know, and that was one of the that was really one of the primary points that I, because I personally heard Raffensperger, Belle Isle, and McCoon speak campaigning for the Secretary of State's race, and that was a point that all three of them brought forth, was the idea that they were the best to campaign against John Barrow. And, you know, I kind of have conflicting opinions on that, because look, here's the deal. You know, Barrow can raise a lot of money. I'll give him that. But this is far from a presidential election. I mean, how many people do you really think are going to watch a Secretary of State debate? I mean, outside of nerds like us.
Well, the thing that's crazy is that, you know, Republicans skip races. I mean, they already, 30,000 fewer people voted in the Senate governor's race than they did in the governor's race in the primary runoff. And even fewer voted in the Secretary of State. And these are people who went to the polls for a reason in July for a runoff election. Like, these are the dedicated voters, and they still skip the race. But when Democrats go in, they don't skip races at all. Like, they just vote down the ballot for their people all the way, and Republicans don't do that. And so I think that's going to be the greatest divide in November.
You know, and that really is true, because, you know, when I was researching those numbers, it was just amazing to me that there's over a 50,000 vote difference between the totals of the Kemp and Cagle race and the totals of the Raffensperger-Belle Isle race.
Well, when Casey Cagle was on the ballot in 2014, I want to say he received at least 100,000 fewer votes in the general election. People just skipped the race altogether than they did for Republican Senate, which was David Perdue and Nathan Deal. I mean, people just... Republicans are like so unprincipled in some ways, and then other ways they like won't cast a vote for someone they don't believe in. It's like, why'd you let them get on the ballot in the first place?
Right.
Well,
I wonder if that's just that I'm an independent streak in them.
It may be, but the bottom line is that we all know that, you know, and it's not just the Republicans. You know, the Democrats are just as bad as the Republicans. about, and the libertarians as well, about not getting involved in the primaries until it's too late. Now, I know that, it's a real pain to get involved in the libertarian primaries because you have to go to the convention and all that. And most people just can't be bothered by that. But, the libertarians are the worst of all the parties. They, they go down to their convention and, like less than 300 people go and they nominate Gary Johnson for president. And then everybody says they can't vote for Gary Johnson for president. It's like, why weren't you at the convention? Why didn't you nominate Peterson?
Speaking of libertarians, today I had a Republican. So I have decided that I will be voting libertarian in the Secretary of State's race because I don't really care for Barrow. And then I'm certainly not a fan of Brad Raffensperger buying the election. But so I've decided to support the libertarian, and I told someone this. And the woman says, libertarians are the worst because they cost taxpayers money and force runoffs. And I'm like, did you really just say that someone voicing their opinion and voting their conscience is a waste of tax dollars? You stupid idiot. I mean, I was like, I didn't even know what to say. I just was like, okay, thanks for the feedback.
Let's call John Peasold and get him in here to discuss instant runoffs. He's not doing anything tonight, I'm sure of it. I'm just kidding. Okay, well, John Peasold has an opinion on instant runoffs.
Well, instant runoffs are like you rank your choices, and so it happens automatically. Like it all happens on the same day. There's none of this 9-week runoff nonsense. It just is over when it's over.
Right. And I wish we would go to something like that.
Well, I missed the 3-week runoff. The 9-week is nonsense.
Yeah, it certainly is. And speaking of nonsense, I have some nonsense for all of the Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong listeners. So, last week after we did the show, Jessica and I were having a conversation and she introduced me to the Shiggy challenge. So I don't know how many of our listeners know what the Shiggy challenge is, but I YouTubed it and I looked it up, and let me tell you, the Shiggy challenge is wrong. So Shiggy challenge participants, let me tell you why you're wrong this week. Okay. Look, this is what the Shiggy challenge is. There's an artist. I'm not sure. I've never heard of anything from him before, but the name is Drake. So this guy named Drake wrote a song, and people in response to this song have been jumping out of moving vehicles and dancing while other people film. Now, there's 3 tiers of this video. There are the ones who simply jump out of a parked car and someone is sitting in the other seat and films them. These people, I'm not talking to you, okay? I still think your challenge is stupid, but my bone to pick is not with you. Tier 2 of the stupidity here are people jumping out of the passenger seat of moving vehicles as the driver continues to move the vehicle and moving forward, and they're dancing. Now, the tier 1 idiots are jumping out of the driver's seat of a moving vehicle while a friend sits in the passenger seat filming and the vehicle continues to roll. I am just appalled by the stupidity that I have seen with this. Youth of America, you have got to have some common sense. Also noteworthy, in my research, and I did a lot of research for this, I'm ashamed to say that I did more research on this segment for the Shiggy Challenge than I typically do for political topics. But with the Shiggy Challenge, I found video of a police officer, a uniformed police officer, jumping out of a squad car to do the Shiggy Challenge and falling. And I would just like to say in closing that this is the best part of the Shiggy Challenge is there's a lot of videos of people falling down and busting their ass. And that's why I enjoy the Shiggy Challenge.
You're going to have to post that video to the page.
What video am I posting to the page?
The cop falling down.
Okay. Matt just posted a video that I am certainly changing my opinion of the Shiggy Challenge.
Right? It's funny. That showed up in my feed as you're talking about it. I was like, damn.
Yes, but as you see from watching this video, Matt, she is a tier 2 idiot. Because she's jumping out of the passenger side of a moving vehicle and allowing someone else to drive.
It does look like they're in the parking lot, though. So
yeah, well, you watch some of these videos. There's some videos that I can post. I might download a lot and put together some compilations. Put together a compilation, but there's some of these people. They're on the middle of the freaking interstate,
right,
and driving through residential neighborhoods, jumping out of the driver's seat of vehicles. You know, there is no good place to jump out of the driver's seat of your vehicle and begin to dance. Jessica, you're young and hip. Have you done the Shiggy Challenge?
I haven't, but usually when I'm in the car, it's because I'm going somewhere and I need to be there fast, so I don't have time for that.
Do you listen to this new artist named Drake?
Define new.
I've never heard of him before the Shiggy Challenge.
I think he's been around for a little while.
Matt, had you ever heard of Drake before the Shiggy Challenge?
No, I had not.
Huh.
In fact, I hadn't heard of the Shiggy Challenge until tonight.
Wow. Well, maybe you should be doing these pop culture segments.
Right.
So, Jessica, do you have any ideas for next week's edition of this challenge?
Watch the old Jonathan.
I don't.
What should I research in pop culture? What grinds Jonathan's gears?
Oh, those are a lot of different questions.
I, for one, would like to see Jessica do the Shiggy Challenge. See, and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you what, because let me tell you what I haven't seen in the Shiggy Challenge. I have not seen anyone jump out of a truck and do the Shiggy Challenge as a cornfield rolls by in the background. You could present that to the world, Jessica.
I'm clearly not focused on the right things. I don't know any of this stuff.
Well, I tell you what, listeners of Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong. What I want you to do is I want you to comment under the post when we post this show and let us know what you would like to hear me discuss next week. And I'll do some research on it and I'll check it out. Because this Shiggy Challenge thing is quite interesting. And I think that the listeners need to be aware of what's going on in pop culture. And clearly, you know, Jessica's odometer's rolling over and she's unaware of pop culture anymore. So I'm going to put this Drake fellow into my Google machine and see what I can find out. So let's see. Aubrey Drake Graham, born October 25th, 1986, is a Canadian rapper, singer, songwriter, and entrepreneur. Drake initially gained recognition as an actor on the teen drama television series Degrassi: The Next Generation in the early 2000s. He released 2 independent projects before signing to Lil Wayne's Young Money Entertainment in June of 2009. So yeah, this guy's been out for about 10 years now. So wow, I'm not doing well. He'd never heard of this fellow. Okay, and one final thing that we did want to close the show with, and we're not going to get into a lot of the details, and this is going to be a serious segment, and we're not going to crack any jokes or any of that. Anybody with a Facebook or a Twitter has seen the Sasha Cohen thing with former State House Rep Jason Spencer. And I suppose that a large number of you have also saw that Jason Spencer has rendered his resignation from the House of Representatives to David Ralston. So what we're going to say about this, and all we're going to say about this, is that it's over, regardless of your opinions of it. It's over. It's been done. He's resigned from the House, and he's no longer there. He's no longer a State House rep. So All on Georgia will not be going through and rehashing this story and continuing to beat this man down. So there's that.
I mean, my perspective of it is, everybody wanted him to step down, and he did. And so he's no longer an elected official. I mean, he is for a few more days, but he is effectively resigned, and the speaker accepted his resignation, and it's done. And he's now a private citizen who messed up, and the people who continue to pile on him are only speaking volumes about themselves and no longer Jason,
Yes, I agree. And anyone that has tried to make this about anything other than Jason and make this about other politicians or political parties or anything else, like you said, that speaks more about them than it does about Jason or about those politicians. So, we are going to do the responsible thing in journalism at this point, and we are going to leave this private citizen alone, and we are not going to contribute to any of the gasoline that is being poured onto that fire, because it's irresponsible journalism and it's sensationalism, and it's what's wrong with journalism in America. On to a happier note, I suppose that can count for my closing thought. Does anyone else have any closing remarks?
I just feel like the Wicked Witch from The Wizard of Oz is, proverbially dead, with Casey Cagle being unelected and no longer serving in public office.
I felt that way about Paulette Rakestraw.
Hey, look, wait a minute. We do have one more thing that we need to cover. Speaking of wicked witches, there was a statement that was put out by Renee Unterman regarding Casey Cagle. So,
which statement? Because she first said that she didn't have anything to say, and then she said that she's not going to back Brian Kemp unless he apologizes for the people who work for him calling her mentally unstable.
She is mentally unstable.
Yes. And she is a presently elected official. So that puts her in an entirely different ballpark. And yeah, I am absolutely amazed by that she's, and remember, voters in Renee Unterman's Senate district, there is a Democrat that is running against her. And since Renee Unterman has decided she's not going to back the Republican Party anyway, why not go ahead and put a Democrat in there? That's my thought.
Man, I guess my closures, I'm kind of glad I'm glad the primaries are over, and maybe we'll get a break for a little bit from the constant campaigning.
I'm sure we will, but it won't last for long. We might have
I mean, we
might have about a 2 to 3 week reprieve before it's going to be all back up, and we're going to hear from Brian Kemp about how Stacey Abrams is the most dangerous thing to ever happen to the state of Georgia. And we're going to hear from Stacey Abrams about how Brian Kemp is the most dangerous thing to happen to the state of Georgia. And, we just go right on down the line. We're going to hear from whomever comes out in the lieutenant governor's race about, how horrible the Democrat candidate is. And then, we're going to be hearing from Raffensperger about how horrible John Barrow is. And we're going to be hearing from John Barrow about how horrible Brad Raffensperger is. And politics, as usual, will go on.
Woo, so much to look forward to.
Right, and then by the time that's done, I don't know what y'all's schedule is like, but right after the first of the year, they'll start kicking off the primaries in my county, at least, for some of the mayoral races in the cities. And then the chairman's seat will be up for grabs, as well as one of the post commissioner seats.
I would just like to say Matt Lowe for mayor of Dallas.
Well, I don't live in the city limits, so but
does it legally matter?
Right. The city attorney doesn't even live in the county, so whatever.
Well, I mean, he's not an elected official.
Nope,
no, he's appointed.
God, I wish he were. Talk about people that are, thinking about people that have been moved out of politics. I mean, I would donate good money to move Josh McCoon to Dallas if city attorney were an elected position.
It should be. Make them accountable to the dang voters instead of the people they serve. Like, it's ridiculous. I would love if they were elected.
Yeah, that really would be good. So, I suppose that's our show for this week. Jessica will not be with us next week as it is going to be her big 3-0. And she will be off in Vegas, eloping.
Again.
Yeah, I try to elope every 5 months or so.
Well, look, why don't you clue us in a little bit to what really is going on in Salaji land? How are you going to be celebrating your 30th birthday party? Shoes off, carrying a bottle of champagne around?
Yes.